Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Start Inspired. I'm your host, Samantha March. Thank you so much for listening, and if you are watching on the YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching. We're here for another episode. My dog's behind me. You might not have seen her at first, but we are definitely sharing a chair together. I actually just woke up, but I was feeling really inspired to sit down and have this conversation about victim mentality and why it's holding you back, how it held me back, and how I started to move on from it, and how hopefully you can too. So before we get started, again, if you are watching on the YouTube channel, I would love if you subscribe. I post these videos on my second channel, which is, I have a main channel where I focus on like beauty, skincare, fashion. And then my second channel, I post the podcast episodes, and I also post videos on like healthy habits and goal planning. So of course, would love if you would subscribe. I post podcast episodes weekly over here. Like the video, share it. Last week's video got quite a few shares and some really amazing comments. So thank you so much for all of those. Or if you are listening on like Spotify, you can always give it a 5-star review. Or if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, you can actually leave like a written review as well. So all of those are super helpful, especially sharing, putting the word out. If you're listening, tag me on Instagram. I am by Samantha March. But I'm excited to get into this episode because I think it was in the April Goals podcast episode that I was talking about my financial goals and how I have a pretty significant financial goal for the year of 2023 that I am working on. And I mentioned in there, my specific goal for April was to take, I think it was like 2 to 4 courses or webinars or just some sort of like continuing education, if you will, when it comes to finances, just so I can become more confident when it comes to finances, when it comes to investing, when it comes to the stock market, when it comes to my 401k, all of those things. And I mentioned in there that, you know, I don't come from wealth, and also things like money management, credit cards, debts, mortgages, even like savings accounts. That wasn't taught to me in school, and I didn't have anyone else teaching it to me. So I, struggled financially for a long time. I worked 3 jobs in college. I had all the credit card debt that I got into immediately because I didn't know what I was doing. And then, as you try to become an adult and you want to buy a house, and, for me, I was getting married, and it was like, but I'm thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in debt. Like, how do I do any of this? How do I get out of it? And, eventually I was able to work my way out of debt, which is great. I have a savings account, multiple savings accounts, high yield savings account, the 401k, all of that. But none of that came naturally to me. I had to put in all of the work to learn that and to gain that knowledge, and then actually put what I was learning, taking aligned action into taking those steps so that I could become more financially secure and stable. So one thing that I had mentioned in this podcast episode was that for a long time I had a victim mentality, because I thought that because of all of the hardships that I had faced in my life, which has been a lot, but even in my young 20s, I thought the universe definitely owes me. Something good has to come my way. Whether I buy a scratch-off lottery ticket and win $100,000, whether I have a sudden inheritance from an aunt in the south of France that I never knew of. I read a lot of like rom-com books where then they go and they get all the money and they get a man too in the south of France, and we all have Sophia Richie's wedding. I thought I was going to get a great job. I mean, if you haven't read The Green Ticket, you probably should, because that was a wild time in my life. I ended up writing a book about it. But I thought I would get like the best job, and I would all of a sudden have all of this money. But I wasn't doing anything proactively. And I even remember I talk about when I first started to hear a lot about like manifestation and putting things out into the universe. And I did all of that, right? Like I would go to bed and think like, I will be a millionaire. I will be financially secure. money is flowing to me easily. And then guess what I did? Nothing. I just sat there and I waited. And I waited for the money to come. I waited for the money to flow to me easily. I waited to find a millionaire in the south of France. Nothing happened. Turns out my financial situation didn't change. And that's why when I talk about manifestation and how I do it and how I visualize and all of that, that's just one part of it. I don't think that you can just think something into the universe and all of a sudden that starts happening. You have to take aligned action. Thinking, journaling, whispering into your water, that's only one part. Then you got to do something about it. So I'm in my young 20s. I'm thinking, I'm just going to speak these things into the universe. Something good is going to happen to me. I deserve good things to happen to me. Didn't do anything about it. It took me a long time to finally understand that the only person that was going to change my life was me. The only person that was going to be able to make any changes into my life was me. So it was now up to me to understand how to make the changes. I don't think that you can just change, like my first video that I did on this second YouTube channel was how I actually changed my life. And it wasn't how I actually changed it. It wasn't the steps that I made that was like, look at me changing, I'm moving, I'm getting a divorce, I'm launching my own business, I'm doing all of these things. How I actually changed my life was what came before that. And it was realizing my habits, my routines, my patterns, who I was surrounding myself by, what I was consuming, all of those, and changing those was how I then was actually able to take the steps to change my life. Do we see where I'm going here? I talk with my hands a lot, so if you watch the YouTube video, you see me everywhere. So when it came to my finances, I couldn't just change them. I couldn't just somehow be adding more money to my bank account. I couldn't somehow just be paying off credit cards. I wasn't manifesting money and waking up and there was $20 under my pillow, like the adult tooth fairy came. So I had to figure out what it was I had to do. So what was that? I had to pay attention to what I was consuming. I had to pay attention to my habits. I had to track my habits and my routines and form a plan from there. And that's exactly what I did. When I tell you it took me a long time, I had to do a lot of different things in order to become financially secure, in order to pull myself out of debt. I mean, I was thousands and thousands of dollars in credit card debt from school and student loans. You know, I put myself through a 4-year private college. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, really? You chose a private college, Samantha, when you knew you had to pay for that yourself? Okay. So I had student loans. I had, you know, credit card debt from buying books, from buying meals on campus, from buying gas, you know, all of those things. I had put certain like medical procedures on credit cards, so there's life in general on credit cards. And then of course, irresponsible spending on credit cards as well. Don't get me wrong. This wasn't all just like school and medical. There was irresponsible spending for sure. And that was me not being aware of high interest on credit cards, compounding interest on credit cards. I didn't know any of those things. I didn't know the best way to pay off balances so you wouldn't have that compounding interest. I didn't know about fees. I didn't know about any of those things. I was just like, ooh, a card that lets me buy a lot of things. This is so exciting. So I had to figure out my credit card situation, and all of this came from tracking. I'm such a fan of tracking. I'm a fan of tracking everything. Everything you do, track it all. Because that actually shows you in black and white. It shows you what you're up to. If you're tracking your daily routine because you want to understand your habits, you want to understand how to build a morning routine, a night routine, how to build healthy habits into your routine, you have to track your days. And not just the big things, not just you went to work at this time, you took a break at this time, you worked out at this time, you came home at this time, you put your kids to bed at this time. You need to track everything in between. What are you doing? Because those are actually your habits. And your habits are kind of like compounding interest, right? On your routines. The different habits that you do every single day builds you into your routines. So what are the small things that you're doing. You know, for me, it's like working from home. It's what are all the different times that I go to the fridge to grab a snack? And then tracking, how did I actually feel when I grabbed that snack? Most of the time it was boredom. Most of the time I just wanted something to do. I just wanted to get up. I just wanted to move around. Guess what? Then I can change going to the fridge into a stretching routine, walking outside, going to get my mail, sitting outside with my dog and reading, different things like that. But you have to track. So I started to track my finances, and I looked up a few different things. And again, this is many years ago that I did this, but I remember looking up like different financial trackers and budgets that I could try to make. And the biggest thing was taking, I want to say, I did this with my ex-husband. We did this together since our finances were merged at this time. I want to say maybe we did a month. And in one of my old computers, one of my old laptops, I still have the little spreadsheet tab on the homepage that you can see that says our finances. And so I think we spent a month and we went through and I just logged every single thing that we were spending money on and every single time we had money coming into us. Because that way we could actually see, are we spending more than we are making? We're not even talking about savings yet. We couldn't even be thinking about a savings account and contributing to savings and building an emergency fund. That was not on the board yet. We were just trying to figure out, are we spending more than we are making? The obvious answer was yes. The obvious answer was yes. And then you have to figure out what to do from there. So that was the biggest step that you had to take. And then you know, you track your finances and you're like, okay, great. I see red flags here. I see red flags here. I'm in debt here. I didn't make as much money here. What do you do with that information? Right? And I remember being in my young 20s and like just being married and just buying this house and getting this beautiful dog who's snoring behind me and just being so overwhelmed of like, I don't know how to have a life or have fun or want to buy furniture for this house that we just got. Like, I don't know what to do. That is where building up your knowledge comes in. That is where taking away a victim mentality, woe is me. I mean, the number of times in my young 36 years that I have had pity parties for myself, it's pretty extreme. But I do it. I think we probably all have pity parties for ourselves every once in a while, maybe for big reasons, maybe for small reasons. Who knows? We get to do it. But how long do you continue to feel bad for yourself? How quickly can you pull yourself out of it? And what do you do after that? Do you make any changes? Do you try to arm yourself with knowledge? Do you try to make changes? Do you try to track your habits? Do you try to change what you're consuming to put you on the path for these better habits that you're trying to build? So you can compound that interest, you can compound those habits into a better routine? Or do you sit back and say, I deserve good things to happen to me, so I'll just wait here. I'll just wait until they come to me. I did that for far too many years. Far too many years, that is what I did. So at a certain point, I had to understand that now I needed to gain that knowledge. So at a certain point, I had to understand that I needed to gain the knowledge. And I'll say from that time in my 20s, when we were working really on like our credit card debt, like we did I feel like I'm blanking on what it's called, not refinancing credit cards, but where you go to like, I think it was called, not a credit union, like consumer credit or something along those lines. And they take all of your credit cards and they merge them together into one payment that you then pay that agency who's then like working with the credit card companies and all of that. That's what we ended up having to do. Consolidating credit cards, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what the correct term is there. But that is something that I had to do because there was no way that I could pay off all of this credit card debt with all of these high interests. You know, after some time, I started to do the thing where I would take the balance on, say, like an American Express card, and I would open up a new Capital One card, and then you would have a 0 transfer balance for a year, so you'd pay no interest on it. But then guess what? I wasn't paying it off in a year because it was such a high balance. So now I just had another credit card open over here with a high amount of credit. So then guess what I did? Then I decided to open a Bank of America card, 0 balance transfer, and I would balance. And guess what that's doing? Destroying my credit rating. Because every time you open a new card and you have these short lines of credit, obviously it's all bad. It was destroying my credit score. So I needed to have help in order to be able to get myself out of this credit card debt. And that was a big goal, and it was something that we worked really hard on. And I remember that time, like, not really going out a lot anymore, like not really having a social life. I remember eating the ramen noodles. At this time I worked from home, eating the ramen noodles every day at home. My ex-husband was used to like going out to lunch with like his coworkers, and he started bringing like, you know, a sandwich to lunch every day. And we really worked hard to get ourselves out of this credit card debt that we were in. And then flash forward a few years, you know, I'm in my 30s. I feel slightly more knowledgeable when it comes to finances. I feel proud that I was able to overcome credit card debt. But I also realized I wasn't all much more financially literate. I wasn't all that much more financially confident. I had a little bit of a savings account, you know, not much. I at one point went from working a more traditional job at a hospital to being full-time self-employed. I rolled over my 401k from my hospital job and started a Roth IRA, but I didn't realize you had to invest in your IRA. I didn't realize you had to contribute to it. So my money actually sat there for 6 years, not doing anything, not going anywhere. Nothing was happening because I didn't know. And I remember at one point, you know, just a few years ago, of just being frustrated with finances, because I would look around and I would see people around me having nicer things, taking better vacations, but also just being less stressed. And I was like, how can I be like you? I still felt, we weren't necessarily paycheck to paycheck at this point, but it felt like pretty close to that. It just kind of still felt like we were struggling so much. And I was like, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I thought I had done something good with this credit card debt thing, but now I still just don't feel like I'm where I want to be. And again, I had to look at my habits. I had to look at what I was consuming, and I had to decide to once again pull myself out of a victim mentality of like, things will just come to me. And I remember at this point, you know, I'm fully in social media and doing, you know, an influencing career full time. I have multiple books that I have published at this point. And I remember how I got myself into victim mentality this time was I kept saying like, oh, well, just like one of my videos is going to pop off. One of my books is going to become a New York Times bestseller. You know, and to me it was like, I'm doing the work. Like, I'm putting the videos out there. I'm learning editing. I'm learning cameras. I'm learning lighting. I'm creating the videos. I'm editing the videos. I'm putting them out there. I'm putting myself out there. I'm building a community. I'm on all these social media platforms. Like, I'm doing it. I'm writing the books. I'm paying for an editor and a cover designer and a marketing team and finding bloggers to review my books. And like, I'm doing it. But I still, like, I got the one part down. I wasn't just sitting back anymore and being like, universe, make me a millionaire. And just waiting for that to happen. Now I was actually taking aligned action, but I still kept waiting. I kept waiting for those results, and I would make goals for myself. Like, you know, I'll have 50,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the year. That's something that I don't have control over. Goals like that, I can't control that. What I can control is, how do you gain subscribers? You put out videos consistently. So my goal can be, I will put out 5 videos a week. that will be my goal, because that is what I have control over. I don't have control over who subscribes, who unsubscribes, if YouTube is pushing out my videos. I only have control over what I can do. So that was change your goal to 5 videos a week, or whatever it is. Again, with books, like I can't just be like, oh, this book is going to be a New York Times bestseller. What I can do is actually write the book. I have so many people that come to me to say, I want to be an author and I want to write a book. Like, what should I do? I'm like, write the book. That's what you got to do first. I mean, I have people that talk to me about like their covers and like their all these marketing ideas that they have. And I'm like, this is amazing. Do you have a book? And they're like, oh no, I haven't started it yet. I'm like, okay, well, you got to do that first. You got to have a book. And then I can, put together a bomb marketing plan. Like that can be my goal, and I can pitch to certain places, and I can send the books to these bloggers who, if they mention it, maybe that would help blow up the book. I want to say you can't make goals that are unattainable, but you have to have some sort of control over them. The point of all of that was, now I at least was taking aligned action, but I was still, in a sense, waiting. I still had my goals not quite in place, like where they should be yet, but I was mostly still just waiting. So when I got to this next point of still being frustrated with my finances, now I'm in my 30s. I have now bought my second house. My ex-husband and I are talking about having a baby. I'm like, you know how overwhelming that conversation is? And then when you can't get pregnant and you go into fertility treatments, you know how much money that is? Oh my goodness, that was so much money that we put into trying to have a baby. And I'm just thinking, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to go through all these treatments. I don't know how to go through a pregnancy. I don't know how to give birth. I hear it's so expensive being in the hospital. And then, oh yeah, end goal is you have a child now for the rest of your life that you have to financially support, at least for their first 18 years. So all of that was very overwhelming, and I was like, you have to get it together. Like, you have to get this together. And so that's when I started to look a little bit closer at my life, my habits. I started to do the tracking again. But I also decided to really look at what I was consuming. And this is, again, what I talked about in that first video of how I changed my life. The biggest thing that I said is, what am I consuming? What am I reading? What am I listening to? What am I watching? What conversations am I having? All of that had to change. All of that had to change. I went from watching reality TV, which of course there's nothing wrong with that. I still enjoy a show from time to time. But I was primarily, anytime I was turning on the TV, I was turning on a reality show or something that's not going to move me forward. I'm reading primarily fiction, which again, I'm mainly a fiction reader, but I would never really even dabble with like nonfiction and try to pick up a financial book or pick up a book from a female business owner, or nothing of those sorts. The podcasts that I listened to were all about pop culture or sports. Again, nothing wrong with that. I still listen to these, but that is all that I was doing. That is all that I was consuming. When I would have conversations with friends and people around me, it would be about, of course, like our lives and like our other friends' lives and what we're doing, what we want to do, and what we're eating and what we're drinking. We didn't talk about our jobs. We didn't talk about our finances. We didn't talk about mortgages. We didn't talk about savings. Like, we didn't talk about any of that stuff for the most part, right? All of that had to change. Once I figured this out, I started to download some podcasts that were based around finances. I started to download podcasts from female business owners. I bought a book called Smart Women Finish Rich by David Bach. That's where I learned that my money in my Roth IRA was doing nothing because of that book specifically. I started to learn how to start my own business. I went to school for entrepreneurship. That is what my major is in, entrepreneurship and business. But, I graduated college in 2009, and flash forward, this is now 2019, and social media has like changed the game of everything, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I actually launch a business? How do I make these products? How do I build a social media presence? All of these things, and some of them which weren't taught to me in traditional school. And so this is what I start consuming. And very quickly things started to change. It's not like it was overnight. And it's not like it was changing because I all of a sudden launched a business. I all of a sudden had more money. I all of a sudden had more in savings. Like those like physical, like tangible aspects, like those weren't what was changing. I was changing. I was changing on the inside. I was getting more confidence and understanding, oh, I now see what a Roth IRA is. Oh, I now understand the risk of investing in one stock versus investing in a bunch of stocks, which is called, I always mix it up, ETF, EFT, one of those things, index funds. I'm now learning the difference between that. Like, I didn't know when I was first like getting into the stock market. It was just like, here, buy a bunch of stocks. Cross your fingers it goes well, right? It's literally like gambling. I started to learn how to make better decisions when it came to that. I opened up a high yield savings account because my savings account that I was so proud that I, had thousands of dollars now in a savings account was making me 14 cents a month on interest. So then I changed it over to a high yield savings account, and that same thousands of dollars started to make me $50, then $100, then hundreds of dollars. And I just, every month I got to see that compounding interest, where when it comes to a credit card, ooh, that's bad. When it comes to your savings account, ooh, that's good. I started to see that number in my savings account go up and up and up. I remember one time being asked in, I believe it was a Q&A video that I did for my YouTube channel. Someone said, did your relationship, I wish I could remember this exact question. Did your relationship with money change like after you started making more money, essentially, was the question. And I thought that was a really good question, because I think a lot of people would assume that once you start to make more money, your relationship with money gets better because you have more of it. Yay, you did it, you have more money. So now you have a more positive view set of money, you're more confident with money. But in my situation, the change had to come first. I had to become more confident with money. I had to not be afraid of money, afraid to have money, to hold on to money, to manage money. That's a whole other podcast episode that I could talk about, is truly fear of money and fear of managing money, fear of losing money. There are a lot of cases of millionaires who have made their million or millions very quickly and then lost it all because they didn't know how to manage it. They had fear of managing it. All of a sudden they have all this money. They're like, whoa, like what should I do with it? That absolutely has happened to me too. We're not speaking in the millions, but when I started to make a lot of money, I remember immediately kind of feeling very overwhelmed. It was like, what do I do? Where do I put it? Where do I invest it? Do I buy things for myself? Like, I don't know what to do. And a lot of millionaires lose that, but they also know how to do it again, right? They can do it again. But it's that learning, it's that confidence, it's that understanding. That was what had to change first, and then my money and financial situation changed. Then I started to make more money. Then I started to be able to save more money. Then I started to be able to invest in money a lot more wisely than I was doing when I first started investing. It was just like, hey, throw a bunch of things out there and see what sticks. I don't recommend that. When I started to do the work, to gain the knowledge, to get the education, that changed my outlook on money. That changed my confidence with money, which then changed my actual tangible financial outlook. That's what changed the paychecks coming in. That's what changed the number in my savings account. That all went in a line. But this whole episode is on victim mentality, pulling yourself out of it, understanding that you're in it, and then pulling yourself out of it, changing your habits, compounding your habits into a better routine, and changing your financial situation. And again, it's hard. It takes a lot of time. And then even when you think you figured it out and you put years into it, maybe you're not fully, that's exactly what happened to me. I was in my young 20s. I was like, I got this. I paid off credit cards. Boom, I'm getting this. Then all of a sudden I'm in my 30s and I'm like, wait, still not great. And honestly, as I sit here now at 36 years old, I'm in a much better place than I was 10 years ago. I'm in a much better place than I was 5 years ago. I'm still not exactly where I want to be. That's why I continue to still have goals for myself. That's why I continue to still make a monthly goal, 2 to 4 courses, webinars, a book, a new podcast, something that will continue to keep me learning. Because also, guess what? Times are always changing. The world's always changing. The industry is always changing. The stock market literally changes every single second. You have to keep up to date. You have to keep learning. You have to keep changing. You have to keep evolving. So just because I thought I had gained some knowledge 10 years ago, well, you know what? Times are different. Just because I gained some knowledge 5 years ago, okay, keep learning. Keep going after it. Keep creating these goals for yourself. That's why I have this big savings account. This is the biggest financial goal I think I've had for myself in a while. I can't just sit back and be like, I put it in my manifestation journal, so I think it's going to come true. You have to take aligned action. You have to give yourself the knowledge. You have to give yourself the tools. You have to equip yourself if you actually want to make changes. No one's going to do it for you. Maybe you do have that rich aunt in the south of France, which I'm really happy for you if you do. But you have to make those changes for yourselves and set yourself up for the best success, because maybe you won't always have that rich aunt. Maybe you always won't have a partner to be able to rely on when things are not looking so great. Maybe you won't always have family or whatever it may be. Maybe you won't always have your job. I mean, no matter what, it feels like no matter what you do, I mean, nothing is ever fully secure, right? You work in corporate, you can lose your job. You work a small business, you can lose your job. You work for yourself, things can change. You know, when the pandemic and COVID was happening, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna have a job. I don't know if people are going to want to buy my books. I don't know if people are gonna want to buy the makeup that I'm recommending and the collaborations that I have just put out. I don't know if people are even gonna wanna sit and watch YouTube videos. Like, we didn't know what the world was like, and I thought, I'm very seriously in jeopardy of losing my job right now. You never know what's gonna happen, but we can set ourselves up for success by doing the work. So that's what I wanted to talk about in today's video, and also because May, I put out a Healthy Habits calendar. It's a free download on my website by samanthamarch.com. I put out a Healthy Habits calendar every other month, and for the month of May, it is focused on financials. So again, free download, just head to samanthamarch.com, download it for free. There is a different habit or a different goal or a different task on every single day of the calendar. That first week is a tough week. There's a lot to do when it comes to tracking. And you know, once you download it, print it out, and I suggest keeping it, because it also takes some time, especially if you do want to track your habits. I typically like to say, do it for 30 days. You can't really track your habits for 3 days and be like, I got a pretty good idea what's going on here. I think it's really helpful, and especially when it comes to money, because within 30 days, you might have unexpected expenses come up. You know, I just had to take my dog to an emergency vet appointment the other day. That was $900 I didn't see coming. Something could happen with your vehicle, a kid, you know, whatever it may be. Unexpected expenses can pop up, so I think it's good to get a solid outlook of it. But you can keep that calendar and you can keep coming back to it every single month. There's days in there like low spend days, no spend days, automating. I mean, that's such a huge thing. I can't wait to send out. I send out like some emails when I do the free downloads, just to keep you inspired and motivated and like, oh, hey, yeah, remember you download the calendar, are you still working on it? So I will be sending out some, but automating your finances and your savings and all of that, looking through what you're spending your money on every month and realizing, hey, this is a monthly subscription. I don't even use this anymore. I actually just did that today. There was something I was going through my bank accounts and I was like, wait a second, I haven't used that website in a minute. Why am I still paying $12 a month for it? You know, you might think like maybe that's only $12, but over a year, I can't do math, so I can't tell you what it is, but it's more than $12. So, went ahead and canceled that one because I wasn't using it. So we have different days like that. This is something that's a super simple way to start to take control of your finances. It's a free download. You don't got to pay any money for it. You can download it and save it on your computer if you don't have a printer. If you have a printer, print it out, hang it up somewhere. It's one very simple way to start to get inspired to look at your routines and your habits and start to make changes. There are so many free resources out there. I take advantage of free stuff all of the time. I be listening to the podcasts, I be watching the YouTube videos. I love going to websites with things like this, with a free budget tracker, with a free finance tracker, with the free calendar. A lot of websites do also have free resources, which I think is super helpful, but this is one if you want it for the month of May. I think this podcast will go up and it's still April. I'm looking at my calendar like, wait, what? So you still even have time. And I put out this calendar last week, and I wanted to put it out a little bit early because of the first week. There's so much to do, and I just wanted to give people a head start and really set yourself up for success. But like I said, this is a calendar that you can keep around. You can do your tracking for 30 days, 60 days even. Come back to your May calendar that you printed out and then start to go through all of the different days. Have your low spend day, have your no spend day, do your automations, do your cancellations, go through your accounts, all the other things that are on the calendar. You can do it at any time. It's always going to be there for you. But you have to take control. If you are someone who struggles with victim mentality, like me, I want to be here to help get you out of it. Even if you don't think that's something that you struggle with, but maybe you just want to change your habits and build a better financial routine, that's what this episode is for. That's what the free download is for. And I hope that it helps. So of course I will have it linked in the description box of the YouTube video. I'll have it linked in the show notes. It's free. I'll be posting some different tips and such throughout May on my Instagram as well. That is by Samantha March. And I want to do some more podcast episodes focused on money as well in May. So if you have any questions, again, this is not something that I am trained in. This is not what my degree is in. I'm just a girl who had to pull myself out of debt. I'm a girl that had to learn financial education by taking it into my own hands. I'm a girl that had to go from making $8,000 a year to 6 figures a year. So I'm just someone who's done it and who will have to continue to do it and continue to work and continue to keep at it. And I want to share that with others. I want to share that journey with others, especially with other women, because I feel like we can be very empowered that way. Obviously there's still the gender pay gap. Women can still have a tougher time than men when it comes to financial. The more that we can help each other and empower each other, I think is a better thing. And what's so funny to me is I sat down to record this podcast episode and I really wanted to make lunch. And I was like, oh, this is probably going to be another 15-minute episode. So I'll just do this real quick and then I'll eat lunch. And I've been talking for almost 40 minutes. So there's that. But I just got really excited to talk about this, and I hope some of what I said helps you out or inspires you or motivates you, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Head over to bysamanthamarch.com to get your free calendar download. Share the episode if you found it helpful. But again, if you do have any questions or ideas for future podcast episodes, if there's anything that I feel like I can touch on, I would be happy to do so. So you can always send them to me on Instagram at @bysamanthamarch, or you can put them in the description box of the YouTube video as well. And I am looking forward to discussing financials and money a little bit more throughout the month of May, and of course just healthy habits and living inspired. But thank you so much for listening and or watching this week's podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and until the next one.